1. Hey guys, this is Dardamos with Dardamos Dominions, and I'm back with more people. We've got 2 players from the game. Say hi, Grippa.
Well, hello, again.
And we have Novell, who was the Airmore player.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
My co-host, Balin. Say hi, Balin.
I'm back for more.
We have Perrins in with us again. You there, Perrin?
Yep.
And then we've got Sakane.
Hey, everybody.
And then we have Zan.
Yep.
Okay, so what we're going to do, this turn is not as interesting as the previous ones, but we do have a couple things that I do want to go over. Scalaria face planted finally underwater, and their underwater conquests seem to have come to an end. Airmore face planted into Vanheim's troops. Here comes the Airmorian Legion. Pangea is raiding with everything. Is that technically a raid? Balin, is this a raid?
I believe that's a fort province he landed on.
Okay, that's fair enough. Ulm went underwater with 10 guys and finally was successful. We can talk about Ichthyus versus Triton. And, okay, so, Novell, I'm gonna ask you about this one. So,
Okay.
let's go over this. What was this? I mean, were you pinging him with your face?
No. This right here is a picture-perfect example of why you don't multi-move. Use the multi-move orders.
Oh no!
So on one turn, they were meant to head towards that fort that I have adjacent to it from another fort that's closer to the top of the lake, right? And they were like, I think that perhaps we can we can just take a trip into the water. And the 2 commanders, they didn't have anything on them either. I was just moving them around to shuffle troops. They just walked into the water, and I'm like, I see.
Sakane, do you use multi-move turns? Or multi-turn moves?
No. Mainly because I tend not to remember what I had ordered 2 turns ago. So it's actually last episode I joined in time, and you were asking people what they do to learn and to check themselves for mistakes. And one of the ways is by not doing multi-move, you force yourself to remember and to think about what each commander is supposed to be doing. So no, I don't end up using it.
Zan, what about you? Do you use multi-moves at all?
I think I've used this in one game, and I paid the price by having war declared on me on a turn where my army was very out of position because I multi-moved.
I've heard that there's bugs. Balin, have you heard that there's like bugs with the multi-moves?
It's an Illwinter game, so I'm 100% certain there was bugs with it at certain points. Development. I don't believe there's any now.
Does anybody know if there's any bugs related to the multi-moves?
So there's not bugs that I know of, but their movement can work in unexpected ways, especially if you're moving through territory and then an opponent is attacking, and which armies are going to move. I mean, there are some very straightforward rules which can be very predictable, and when people don't understand them, they complain and they think it's bugged when it's not the case. But there are a few situations where it does depend on RNG, and it's very hard to predict what's going to happen, and that can feel like it's a bug, but it's just sort of the weird design.
It's a bit scripted, so it'll always take the most efficient path, and anything such as an event that can change the heat scales. So a province that was once cold suddenly becomes hot, and the snow is removed, changing the movement point value it takes to cross it. Well, all of a sudden, you wouldn't have gone through that path originally. Now that the snow's removed, the army moves through that path. So it can get pretty strange all of a sudden with the way that move is set up. It checks itself. The first time you see the arrows go out isn't actually what the final result for your multi-move may be.
Okay, so let me give you an example of this. If you're in Ulm and you're trying to go here, if you do a multi-move and it sees that this connection is cold and cold, and you move down here, then it will, and then the next turn it turns hot, and so it's no longer crossable. It'll go here, but there's times where like this route will be longer, and so then it gets cold again, and it'll go back and forth and back and forth. Is that correct?
No, it's not quite that dumb,
Yeah,
but
there's a way of making it do that, and that's by using province affecting rituals. Woven Winter, for instance, you can kind of get it to jerk around with something like that because certain magics go before the movement phase, but realistically, it's not going to be that retarded.
Okay, so Novell, I actually had because you played a lot of single player, correct?
Yeah, between Dom 2 to Dom 5, I am well over 5,000, 6,000 hours.
Now, one of the things I got to play an Airmorian game single player, and I mean that's rough, especially when you're playing the single, when you're not doing that multi-move stuff. I could very much see myself using multi-turn moves as Airmore in single player, and I think that's probably where you picked it up. Is that correct?
That is where the habit is from, and I have learned since that is a mistake.
And what's interesting is I wanna pull this in because you're a newer player. You've won your first game as Airmore. You're getting better every single game. You're getting to the point where you're understanding some of these differences between single player and multiplayer. What are some of the changes that you've seen in going from single player to multiplayer?
So I was never really interested in multiplayer. I was very content just to play a necromancer by myself for the longest period of time. And then I got invited to a multiplayer game about 4 months ago, and I started playing multiplayer. And I had built this version of Airmore that you're seeing is very similar to that very first Airmore that I put out. It was a complete and total hellblast, with one exception, and it was the Earth that it had was not Fortitude. It was actually +6 strength. It's like that's the only difference between like that bless that you're seeing here. So with Berserk, I think it was +8 total. It was massive damage on a lictor. And I ran into Hellblessed Ashdod and got floored by Quickness, Blood Bond, Regen,
Yes.
and I was like, okay, maybe I'm doing this wrong. Maybe this overpowered bless that has always been able to just take over anything that the AI can throw on impossible difficulty. So that's what it's built for. It was built for fighting the AI at the highest difficulty level. So every lictor had to kill like 1,000% more than it did at standard difficulty. That's what the bless came about from dealing with.
Grippa, how much did you play single player before moving in?
About a month before I started new castings.
Do you traditionally play single player games or multiplayer, like PvP?
Traditionally, I play single player. Dominions is one of the few multiplayer games I actually play.
That's kind of what I do. I don't really do the whole player versus player, except for like cheesy games like League of Legends or something like that. How are you liking moving from a single player to a multiplayer? Like how do you feel about that?
It definitely opens up a lot of different things you have to worry about. Somehow I got lucky, and I'm really good at diplomacy, which is at least half of a multiplayer game is diplomacy. If you suck at diplomacy, you will not win a game. I'm fairly certain, unless it's something ridiculous. Because if you can't negotiate with your neighbors on who you want to attack, who you don't want to have attack you, etc., you're going to have a bad time. And somehow all of my victories or all of my successes in Dominions have been because of diplomacy at the expense of people in this chat like Zan.
I have the exact opposite experience. I didn't realize how much people hated Pop Kill when I first picked Aramore. So I was absolutely unaware of
we didn't realize how much we hated Pop Kill.
I did not. When I first started playing, I jumped into a game of multiplayer. It was my very first one, and I got attacked by 4 people on like at the very end of the first year, like turn 10, and I was like, "What is this? What is going on?" And if it wasn't for the fact that was just a ridiculous hell bless, I probably would have died instantaneously there. But I just had no fathoming about it. I was playing still like single player. I was thinking this is just expansion. No one would want to run up here and attack at the very beginning of the game. I was completely wrong about that. And
Okay, so
I've had to learn how to navigate the dog pile now.
let's go to Perrin. If you're Airmore, how important is this lake to you?
To me, well, keeping it out of Scalaria's hand helps. The great thing about the lake is it's going to be under Dominion pressure from multiple corners, so the chance of me killing it with my Dominion is relatively low. So there's a hope that I might be able to squeeze some gold out of it, which, as Ermor, is my lifeblood, and the only person who's really going to contest me for it at this point is Scalaria. And I'd be feeling okay about that fight, but at least underwater until Scalaria gets serious about it, then I'm probably going to get my teeth kicked in.
Secondly, to push into the little diplomacy thing, let's say that you're Airmore, you move in here, you find Scalaria. Do you fight them for the lake, or do you negotiate for profit?
In this particular game, it looks like you can just fight Scalaria because you don't border them, right? I don't think to the south he borders Scalaria.
Nope,
No,
he's
Ulm is
insulated by an Ulm.
Yeah, so you're safe. Just go take it from
yeah.
him.
No, totally. I would have fought them if I had found the death site. I swear to you that this game is mostly predicated on the improbable nature of not finding a death site in like 12 site searches.
So
and that's one thing.
Sorry, I just wanted to just add to that if you're playing Airmore or like Lemuria, just do what everybody's going to attack you anyways, as they should. And so just go do whatever you want to do. Like, you want that lake, go attack the person who owns it. They're going to attack you anyways, right? It's not like you're not going to Diplo your way out of a lot.
Okay, I want to hit Perrin on this one because Perrin, I know that's not your style, correct?
No, it's not. And I know I'm a bit of an outlier here. I absolutely think Ermor can and should Diplo its way out of things. I think Ermor has a lot of diplomatic assets, mainly being completely unpalatable to take, and there being no reward for its existence, and everyone else wants you to die, but not to have to do it themselves.
But how do you stop that then? I mean, that sounds like you don't have diplomatic tools.
I've discovered how, actually.
You do.
So,
you have the ability to inflict harm on people, and you have the ability to give nothing to those that attack you. So if I am, let's just, out of context for this game, if I am Ulm and Ermor comes to me and says, hey, can you leave me alone? I'm going to go fight Satis. As long as Ulm doesn't think I'm going to like snowball so much they can't possibly stop me later, then there's every reason for Ulm to take that deal. I've allied with Ermor before in games actively, and I've done that because I knew, yes, I know Bolin, and
shame.
Well, I won the game, right? Because Ermor is going to take up everyone else's, all the oxygen in the room. They're going to suck up people's resources. They're going to require people to respond to them actively. And when they eventually lose, the people who fought them are going to get nothing. So as long as Ermor isn't then a threat to me, there's a reason to work with them. So if I'm in Ermor's position, I want to find a player who thinks like me and say, look, I'm going to go be someone else's problem. And in this game, I think Ermor can make the argument, look, there's a Scalaria in this game. They macro far harder than me. They're more dangerous than me. And killing them actually gives you gold and resources. So, like, go fight them. Let me be someone else's problem and deal with me later. And hope they can't actually deal with me later.
Now, Grippa, would you, because you weren't actually, or you had this small border, you napped with Airmore, correct?
Yes.
And I want to ask you about this because I'm kind of curious. You have a ton of troops on the border. Why?
Because I don't trust him.
So, what do you mean by you don't trust him? Go into that.
Novell does one thing only, and that is play Ermor. So he's like, every time I think of Novell with the minions, I think of that SpongeBob meme where they only know fine dining and breathing. Well, Novell's removed the breathing part because all he does is undead stuff. So I don't trust anything that Novell does as an Ermor here, because it's all he knows. It is like, I'm fairly certain it's some like quote where it's like, the swordsman who's practiced one thing 1,000 times. I kind of wanted to kill him for the majority of the game. I had debated ending my nap. I formed the nap because I didn't want to be his first target. And then I kept troops there to continue to discourage him from being to being his first target. Even though it's an awkward attack angle, I didn't want to deal with it without at least some kind of built-up troops, and to finish doing some expansions. So I was going to end my nap probably actually relatively soon, until I saw that he was attacking Vanheim, and they were just killing each other. And I was like, I am more than happy to have the elves murder themselves on the undead. So go ahead. I ain't attacking for now. But if that hadn't transpired, I would probably have actually declared war or more myself.
That seems to play into what Varun was saying.
Likewise, I was planning on attacking Satis.
Son of a bitch.
If it wasn't for the fact that by random chance I gained map awareness that there was a death site in that fort, I was 100% planning on just trying to take Satis' capital. Because
Dan,
we had a double bump in that cave system, and I was really irritated about that. So I held the grudge just to begin with there. I also didn't realize his cat was that close, by the way.
Yeah, when we first met, you're like, hey, I want that province. I'm like, it is 2 for my cat. No, thank you.
Yep, and I'm like, oh, well, that's information I never would have had before because I also didn't find any scouts.
Zan, how much do you trust a nap with a player? How much do you garrison a border?
If it's somebody that I know and I can trust, not really too much. I might even put my research monkey lab castle there. If it's someone I've never spoken to before, or I couldn't, I don't trust them at all. Oh, that fort's just going to be recruiting troops all day.
I want to have a second opinion on this as well. Second, how much do you trust a nap?
Yeah, I think Grippa made an excellent point, which is, well, first of all, when we say trust a nap, I think so let's say you have like a nap 3. In other words, the terms are you're not allowed to attack without giving like 3 turns warning. Certainly in this community that we play in, there's almost nobody who will violate the terms of a nap. There are some people, but it almost never happens. Which is to say, let's say Satis has signed a nap 3 with Airmore, but then one side just decides to attack and completely violate the terms of the treaty. That is pretty rare in this community, although it can happen, and maybe in other communities it's more common. So that's one meaning of do you trust the nap? But the other meaning is just like if you make a nap and then 5 turns later they're like, okay, I'm ending the nap, I'm going to attack you in 3 turns. They didn't break the nap, and your trust, that's, you got what you paid for, right? So it's very important what Grippa said is that I put troops there so that if Airmore was like looking for his next target, whether he napped me or not, he's going to end nap with somebody, and he's going to look at all the borders, and he's going to be, well, there are troops there, troops there, troops there. Oh, no troops there. I'm going to go attack this guy, right? So it really is important to show some strength on your borders if you want to dissuade your enemy from attacking you. And that's kind of separate from whether or not you've signed, a nap with somebody. Because honestly, if somebody sees like a completely empty border, they don't have to violate the nap, but they could just end the nap and then attack you 3 turns later.
Yeah, I feel like I have to clarify that. I didn't think that Novell was going to attack me without ending the nap. I was just certain he was going to end the nap and attack me. Like, not like, like a sneaking attack.
I was expecting like a violation of nap.
No. I realized when I was like thinking how I spoke, I'm like, I don't mean he was gonna like violate the nap and attack with breaking it. I meant that he would look at me and be like, "Hey, you're next," and I'd be like, "Well,
you
shit."
You don't want to be the next target. Okay. Colin, you kind of you dip your toes into multiple communities. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Like
I'm in like 5 or 6 different Dominion servers. Yeah.
And you're in games in 5 or 6, right?
Yep.
Does because I think Zach hit on it in our community, which most of us are in the Lucid's community. Naps are kind of almost sacred, where you don't see them violated.
I would like to disagree on that. Across the Dominion, there's one general rule: you trust somebody as far as you throw them. And since most people are on multiple servers, you find out quickly which people you can trust. For example, comes to a surprise that I have broken naps for various reasons against various people. And did I win those games? Won some of them. But sometimes it's a player who you just made super mad, just like, screw it, I don't care, you're going to die now. And they will end their nap. On the Big Dominion server, it happens more, but that's because there's like a couple thousand people playing Dominions over there. The Immersion server, they're all new players, so they are very skittish of any formal agreements. And in GC server, I've never seen an app get broken, but I've also seen an app take up 3 pages of a text document.
Wait,
Yeah,
what?
they're very
Okay, go
diplomatic
into
over
that.
there.
That's a Perun question for you.
I'll go, Curran. What is the 3 pages? I want to hear this story.
This was a coalition agreement to counter a throne rush, and it was very explicit in how long it would last, which coalition partners would take which thrones to make sure no one could use the cover of the coalition agreement to win the game, and make sure that it had a long nap term while the coalition needed to stop the rush. And then as the rush was stopped, the length of the nap decreased over time. So as various nations in the target were knocked out, the nap length went down from 6 to 4, for example. It also had things like military access provisions and trade provisions to make sure that we wouldn't be encouraged to cut each other off during the advance. All those things that players might be tempted to do to jockey for position that make sense individually but take away from the overall coalition effort. That, for the record, is how I'd kill Ermor. If I had to kill them, I'd make sure there was a proper agreement surrounding it, so no one had the temptation to jump out early, and everyone knew exactly what was required of them and what they would get out of the war to begin with.
Did you form
So-
the UN for this game? Jesus Christ.
So for the background, I come from a sort of strategic wargaming background where we bring, at the time it was mostly honor students, active military, things like that, and we'd run simulations of major geopolitical events. And yes, you would have lots of treaties and agreements being formed on the run. And that's what I bring into Dominions. And I was actually shocked that there's no hug boxing, there are no alliances, there are no agreements here. There's a big opening for adding that degree of complexity to the game, because I think there's a place for it.
So, Perun, you're a war table guy.
Yes.
Yeah, me too. I've been a big fan of it since college myself. Obviously, I play a nation that basically is incapable of doing that, unfortunately. But that style of diplomacy and treaties and agreements is something I've always had a great preference for in tactical strategy games as well as tabletop strategy games like Warhammer.
Yeah,
Fallen.
and I think Ermor can Diplo. So that's the one thing I will say. I think Ermor can and should Diplo.
Fallen, because I think that either you or Sack have been around the longest. How long have naps been around, and when did they become a thing?
Naps becoming a thing. That's a great question. I'm not really sure. I ran into my first one like 3 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know the exact answer to that, but I don't see a reason why why they wouldn't have been around for a very long time. But I'm all for like the kind of sophisticated diplomacy that Perun was talking about, and in fact, in some of the games that I've played, there has been some pretty involved diplomacy. I think that because the game mechanics don't like the game mechanically doesn't offer any incentive specifically for diplomacy. Like there are a lot of strategy games where you have like the actual diplomacy structure built into the game, and therefore you have like resources attached to that or some kind of incentive. So in Dominions, the only incentive, which is not a bad incentive, it's a good incentive, is the strategic value of whatever you're going to get from the diplomacy. But so you have to weigh that against like, well, I just have a bigger army and I'm going to go kill you now, which is a very effective form of diplomacy. And like the truth is that in most games, it is simpler and faster to do bigger sword diplomacy than to do sophisticated diplomacy.
Yeah.
So that's what happens. But I don't want to like take away from the value of sophisticated diplomacy. It's just that you can do that, but then I can show up and elf you or whatever, show up with 300 lictors, and it's like, okay, well, whatever. We're
Yeah, but diplomacy is the art of maneuvering the board so that no player is in a position where that is their optimum decision. My goal would be to make sure that you always have something you would want to be doing more than elfing me by controlling the way the resources and the assets are flowing around the game, controlling that broad game state. And maybe it's because I play larger games generally, but
yeah.
most resources at most of the time are
huge.
not yours. And
And-
controlling how those other resources interact is critical.
And I would just say that's the flip side of the coin, is that because there are no resources in the game itself for diplomacy, the only resource it takes is your time, and I guess your like charisma capital, right? Like that you spend, right? You might people might start to get tired of like answering all your messages about diplomacy, but
Yeah.
those are your resources that you're free to put into the game if you want to, or you could not and just say like, okay, whatever, I'll just attack you or not attack you, and you can keep it simple. So,
Karen, you seem to be very like involved in the diplomacy. How many games do you play at a time?
One, maybe two.
Just one.
I
one
have
or two.
I have a pretty demanding job. But I would say for every minute that's spent doing a turn, 3 to 4 is spent diplo or coordinating.
Oh, at
How
least
much do
3
you
to 4. I would say you spend upwards of 10 minutes per turn in the Disciples game alone.
How much do you think that actually?
And my turns themselves are relatively quick. How much do I think that what?
How much do you think that attributes to your success?
90%.
So if you did zero
I
diplomacy, do you think
would
you'd have
lose
the
every
same level of
game.
success? You lose every game.
I would lose every game. I won my first game as LA Atlantis. I didn't post that one, but I did record the turn, so I can put that up at some point, and you will see I am not playing a good game as a Dominions player. My expansion is like dodgy, my armies are haphazard, but the rest of the game was set up in such a way that I could eventually open up and rush despite not being able to beat any of the more experienced players in a head-on fight. So I think diplomacy is critical.
My first game, I did the same thing where it was like, almost all day, I was only playing one game, and almost all day I was chatting with, getting to know some of the other players, and I got to get some really good friendships that I was really excited about. And then what's interesting is that every single one of those players that I got to know really well, like, quit Dominions within like 3 months. And my desire to do that kind of evaporated. But just getting those relationships was kind of cool as well, where you actually get to meet some of the Dominions players. So how many of these players do you keep up with after the game, or is it just like, okay, well, we did our purpose, I won my game, I'm done, and then you just move on? Perrin,
I don't want to monopolize all the time here, but I'll say that I don't actually think I don't think it's built on relationship management. Like, you don't have to have a good personal relationship with the people. Most of the time doing Diplo is not spent messaging people. It's spent looking at the broad map and going through what each player is likely to be wanting to be doing at that point, and then what do you need someone else to do differently in order to change what A does, what B does, what C does, what D does, to get to outcome E that you finally want. And then it's sending a couple of short interactions that may not seem to be strategically relevant to ABC, so that you knock those dominoes down and things pan out as you want them to. So I'll keep up with people after games. I've made some good mates out of Dominions, but you don't have to be spamming people with messages. You don't need your 3-page agreements all the time. You don't want to annoy people, to be frank, because a lot of people don't spend a huge amount of time on each individual game. But a little bit of information trading, a little bit of interaction goes a long way. But if you're basing your diplomacy on they're a good mate, therefore they're going to do what I want, then I think you're setting yourself up to fail, and that's also an unfair expectation, right? Like, you don't want people to play suboptimally because you have a good relationship, and the other players in the game should probably feel cheated if that's happening.
Yeah, it's not competitive in that way.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm on the exact opposite of Karun. I would say that my Diplo time is definitely like under 2 minutes. I don't spend a lot of time talking to people, and I'm also not just in one game. I'm in 23 active games with 2 pending across 3 computers.
Val, can I cut in real quick because I think that something else is that your Diplo is always in the boards. Like
That's true.
Yes, you only post screenshots.
Yeah, I tend to basically turn any game into open Diplo. I rarely privately message people. People message me, but I don't reach out, generally speaking.
And I hate to hit back to Perrin real quick. How much of yours is above the surface where everybody can see, and how much is below the surface? Give me a percentage.
2% is visible.
Okay. Secondly, how much do you actually use the boards to do Diplo at all?
Well, so what Novell said is not surprising because the Diplo that Airmore has to do is, look, don't attack me, go attack somebody else. Please, 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 please. And the best way to do that is for Airmore to like have a successful fight against one of the 5 people that attack them, and then show that that guy is now weak because he just lost his big army. So one of the other neighbors should go attack them. And so it's no surprise that he's going to be posting in the game chat or on the forum or wherever your community has. And it's just going to show everybody, look, here's a screenshot of random player losing all his army attacking into Airmore. Somebody go kill him, right? So
that is the bread and butter.
That's a bread and butter of his Diplo, and that can be effective. So, but I'm not surprised that that's the main kind of Diplo that he does.
The other half of it is just intimidating people. I'm like,
Yeah,
before the dog pile appears, when they all start massing up on my border, I'm like, let me explain to you what's going to happen in the next 10, 20 turns.
Yeah.
And it plays out exactly that way. I'm in a game, Heart of Darkness, where Asphodel, and a bunch of other people came together to attack me at once, and now I'm on Ohm's cap. I'm like, you weren't going to win.
Well, I did kind of kill one of his like armies early on, accidentally.
Yeah.
Did
But
you
anyway,
accidentally?
I can totally wipe now.
Yeah.
But
So
I would like to add before Elk cuts us off that as
Yeah.
Karun's disciple partner, I maybe see 40% of the Diplo he does. He doesn't share everything. Because some of the stuff he gets is in confidence, and that he won't even tell his own teammates is such a betrayal.
No, but if someone tells me something in confidence, I'm going to keep that. It doesn't matter if I'm working with other people on a team. Like, otherwise, that information source dries up. Like, your credibility is your greatest resource. It travels between games. It's enduring, and when you're recording a game, there is no escaping. If you pull a shifty on someone, like the entire internet is going to know. So yeah, no, I'm going to play it straight, even if that means keeping secrets from my own disciple like teammates. And they're just going to have to trust me when I say I suggest we do X, that it's based on some information or some understanding I've reached.
I think.
Okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Do one last comment. We got to shift back. Sorry.
Yeah. So, people have you raised the question about like, is it based on personal relationships or more like intel about the game? And Perrin mentioned that it is mostly based on sort of the intel of the game, but your reputation does carry between games, and so it's if you play a lot of games in the same community, people will get to know you, and they will. You can make it easier or harder for diplomacy to succeed based on what kind of diplomacy you do in other games, right? So if you're always the person crying wolf in the team channel saying like, oh, I'm, help attack this guy, he's, whatever, then that gets old. And people, when you join a game, oh, that person's always going to do that, right? Or you can build a reputation as somebody who kind of like always tells it straight. So maybe you're not afraid to use the public chat, but what you're posting there, you're not trying to be manipulative. You're like just saying things that are straight up and pointing out, perhaps selectively, but pointing out uncontestable truths about the current state of the game to try to get people to do something that would be logical. And maybe that's the reputation that you build or whatever, but do keep that in mind.
And Dynamos, can I put one sentence in just to append to that?
Yeah.
Manipulation is a key word there. When you're the best diplomacy is making sure that whenever you're suggesting someone does something, it's to put them in a better position than if they hadn't done it. You're never leading people astray. The art of winning the game through diplomacy is convincing everyone to do the right thing by them up until the point that it will win you the game.
I still want to go further into that, but we need to hit this turn real quick because I just noticed one thing that I think might affect next turn, and it might not. Real quick, Zan, this big ol' army was here, and the elves are no longer stealth. What's going on? Zan, are you there?
Dan went out to grab something.
It's because
No!
the omniscient scouts have spirit sight, so they see them. That's why.
I do believe that this was actually. I think that he came out for an attack right here. Grippa, you're gonna pick this one up for me, dude. You there?
Yeah, what's up?
Okay, why are all of his troops unstealthed, and why is he here when the Airmoran army was here last turn?
I presume he's riding out. As for why they're unstealth, I assume he attacked the province to try and get them. I actually have no idea how elfing works.
Okay, so you think he's actually coming out for a fight, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we thought that they would move south, not southwest.
Okay, so just a curiosity, Valen, do you think they want to fight each other? Is it like a mutual that they both want to kill each other?
100% that Van thinks he can kill that big stack, and we're gonna find out next turn if he can.
Do you think Novell? Okay, Novell, don't tell us the answer, but do you think Novell wants this fight as well?
Sorry, who are you asking? Oh, you're asking
Valen.
right.
Valen, do you think that Novell wants this?
Because he's got just as many troops in that stack as he does in his cap circle of forts.
Okay, Sack, would you take, or if you want to take this fight, where do you think the fight's going to take place?
Well, first of all, if both players think they can win, then one of these players is wrong. So that is right. One of these, like, only one outcome is the true outcome. So one of these players is terribly wrong. If I'm seeing this map correctly, it looks like Van has an Airmore fort under siege down there.
In his cap circle.
And it's
in Van's cap circle.
It used to belong to Van. I took it, but he booted off the army that took it. So this is me going to get it back.
I would, if I was Airmore, I would move onto that fort, because you can. So yeah, okay, I would move on to the fort because it's a permanently threatening position if he can keep it, into Van's cap, and you're not too worried about Van like moving his death ball further into your territory because you have like another bajillion skeletons that could potentially deal with that, and you can counter raid pretty easily as Airmore. So Airmore, I don't think should be afraid of just moving onto that fort, and for that reason, Vanheim should also. By the way, Vanheim can't PD dump on that fort, so that's a better place to take the fight. And I think Vanheim should see this. If he looks at the game from Airmore's point of view, I think he sees that as the best move. So if he really wants to take a fight, he should move back onto that fort and defend.
Perrin, what's the chances of us seeing the final showdown next turn? What do you think the percentage is?
Greater than 50%. If they're both confident, that's the place that the fight's going to happen. Because Ermor wants to press on and threaten the capital, and if Vanheim wants to take the fight, he needs to go where Ermor is going to be. He can't go raid dead lands that are worth nothing with no supplies in them.
Well, we'll get to see that next episode, and I want to say thanks to all my co-hosts again. Valen, always a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
Grippa, sorry we didn't get to you too much, but thank you again for joining us.
It's all good, thank you.
Novell, it's been excellent having you in during your war, so I appreciate you joining us.
Happy to be here.
Perrin, I'm glad to have gotten to some difficult questions with. Thanks again for joining us.
More of my radical ideas.
And Sakane, as always, a pleasure.
Thank you.
And I want to say thanks to Zan as well, even though he's out. Really appreciate him joining as well. And I hope to see you guys in the next one. Have a good one.